Don't settle for an ordinary life. It's easy to be ordinary. Anybody can do that.
Next question. What it means to be free in our nation? I
Oh
do believe this is
man.
probably my buddy's
Oh
favorite
man.
question.
I'm gonna go on a tangent.
Go ahead, man. I'm gonna let you have the floor. We're gonna sit
I
back and learn
I
some stuff,
I
take
can
some
only
notes.
release so much though. Like I'm on an NDA.
All right, well, take what you can, man. Have at it.
I don't if you really dig into the history, and I know a lot of people don't look at that because we're so indulged in our day-to-day activities, but if you really go back and we start seeing um what has accumulated to get us to this point, right? Well, people will walk up to you and be like, I'm free, I'm an American, I'm this or that, but a lot of the stuff is word plays. It's legalese. Like, so when you're talking these things and you say you're a United States citizen and I'm free, like we can. What type of freedom do you want to speak about? Free in America, like free financially, free mentally. What? Because I can go down two different roads, and the one road's gonna be longer than.
Well, yeah. So yeah, because I do know you can go forever on this. So let's just narrow it down. So, what does it mean to be free in our nation? So therefore, America, are we free?
I'm
As
free.
you're free.
I'm.
Tell us what we are when we're born. Try to keep it simple. Just keep it short. Make it clear for people to understand. So
Dead.
let's just start from birth. When we are born and we get a name, your mother and your
Yep.
father, we stand there, we give them a name, and then we sign that birth certificate. What is that? What's happening there? And why
You're
is that
making it.
important?
You're making a special trust deposit. Your mother makes a special trust deposit at the hospital the day of your nativity. They call it a birth.
Now, what is a special trust deposit?
So, because she has brung forth a living soul being, and they give you a birth certificate, right? The birth certificate is ultimately a security instrument. Um, that goes down, it gets filed, and you'll notice on your birth certificate you have two different dates on there. You got the day you come out, what time, whatever, and then you have a separate date of registration where the registrar puts it into the system. So there's two different dates. That's the date you died, right? When it gets registered, the birth
Oh,
certificate, right? And they
okay. So you,
registered it on the miscellaneous land recordings in the county, thus making it real property. So when I say you died, you physically didn't die.
okay.
Your living name died, and they created a fiction entity to do business with you in commerce.
Therefore, you become an asset.
Well, technically, when your mother was the informant on the birth certificate for the state of Michigan, which is a corporation, you can look all this up. She thus turned over her rights, making you a child, and children, if you start looking into that, are rented. They're owned by the state, right, through a process called parents patriae and a whole line of stuff that's happened. So, because your mother never really got a consideration that day, they never gave her a full disclosure of what the birth certificate's actually doing, right? So, it creates a trust deposit. It creates a trust, right? There's trustees, there's the grantor, there's the beneficiaries. It's all trust. And in the background, you're going to end up getting an SS4, which is a social security number for your juristic person, your being, your entity in commerce. And then you're going to have an account. It's all done through the IMF. So, like, there's this whole line of stuff that happens, right? It's the IMF, social security, then the juristic person name, the commerce name,
Hmm.
which everybody uses today. When they go out, they think it's them. It's not you. You got to put the arm's length in there. That's not you. You're just the man or woman controlling that because it don't move without you. It's dead. There's no consciousness in a card. There's no consciousness in a driver's license. There's nothing. And people be like, "What do you mean? That look, I'm on there." No, that's the likeness of you. So there's so much that happens that
So what are they gaining out of doing this?
jurisdiction, control. They ultimately do this to engage in commerce with you. So it forces you, certain things force you into contracts, right? Unknowingly, everything is a contract. You have the right to contract or not to contract. Those are in the laws. It's a force into contract because they need to contract with you ultimately to get things from you. The contract with the driver's license. Now it's forced you into paying tags, registration, plates, insurance, and all these things because unknowingly the state of Michigan holds the true MSO to the car.
How should we travel?
I mean, technically, you want to look in all the Articles of Confederation, the Constitution. We have the right to ingress and egress to and from freely and unmolested from anybody. So it's
passports. I heard something about passports. How are passports have anything to do with the way we travel outside of actually having a?
That's another
ID?
contractual agreement.
Okay.
It's in our oldest our oldest documents that have been written by the founding fathers prior to this. We have the right to travel from state to state freely, to and from. We can go anywhere. But because of all the things that they put in line over the 100 years, and people just think this is the way it is, no, we got to have that. There's ways to fill it out so that way it reflects different things,
So there is a way out.
There's a way out. They have to leave the way out.
Right.
It's a long road to go through. It's a lot because you got to 180 your mind. We got to 180 our mind from the ways we were taught and the way we were believing to start thinking differently, outside of the box, start asking questions because they taught you not to ask questions.
Right.
We're not free. They make us believe we're free, and they give you privileges, and then at times when they feel deemed they don't need you, you're not going to get these privileges if you don't do X, Y, Z. They will force you into complying with this to have this.
Right.
Ultimately,
like
recently it was for your safety.
Right.
But you're giving up rights for safety voluntarily. We do this voluntarily because that's what they've taught in society.
Because you don't know anything else.
And to me, people that say it's my job, it's no excuse. I don't give a shit what your job is. What's the law? And if you're going to bring me some code or statute, well, then we can go to Congress because Congress has ruled on that. Rodriguez versus Ray Donovan. All codes, rules, statutes, and ordinances are for government employees only. I'm not. Do I look like a government employee? I'm not. The freedom starts with you. We can take it back to the Bible. God gave man dominion over all things that fly in the air, all the fish of the sea, and all the land, and everything that creepeth upon the land. But he didn't say, I give you dominion over fellow man. So who are you to control me, as long as I'm doing no wrong, harm, injury, or loss to somebody, as God said? That's the ultimate law. You got to free your mind before you can free everything else.
Yeah.
Just wrap up your question. I don't think we're free. Nobody in this country is free.
We're not free at birth, but we are able and capable to become free.
Yeah. We're free as man and woman at birth. Our day of nativity. The creation of the juristic person, we can control that. That's ultimately what we're supposed to do. That being the entity that they have, because all government's corporation. You can,
right.
If you don't believe me, you can go to Dun & Bradstreet and search every corporation name. And it's going to have a Dun & Bradstreet number, which is an identification number because they have to pay taxes. At Genesis Hospital, I had a kidney stone. I went in, right? I went in and I handled my business clearly. They kept trying to force a mask. Well, guess what? I'm not an employee here. Would you like to make me an employee? Because your policies apply to employees. There's no law in place that says I have to wear a mask. There's a mandate. Mandates are for government employees. Right? Go look up the word mandate in Black's Law Dictionary. So there's all these things in place. So if you want to employ me underneath Ascension Genesis, I have no problem putting on a mask, but it's going to cost you X, Y, Z. Right? So they called the cops. Well, I told her, I said, okay, well, bring him in here. I need to discuss some things with him because I know he's got bonds, and I'll just go ahead and go after the bondholder and try to force comply me with the policies, and I have no problem doing that, so I can charge him as well if he would like to order me to wear it. Guess what happened? They got me a room, and I went in the back with no mask because I knew my grounds. I wouldn't budge. I knew my laws, and I knew how to hit him where it hurts.
When I'm listening to you talk, Kai, there's a lot of terminology that a lot of people may not understand
We gotta
And
enlighten.
that is one of the biggest things with knowing who you are and knowing how to become free. So when you're dealing with this, how important is it to know what you're talking about when you're in these situations?
Very important.
Because if you, let's just say we we got listeners and someone may hear this and they say, "Oh, I can do that too." Well, what are
There's
the odds if you don't know the terminology to being successful with that? Because
it's gonna
that's a
be
big
limited
situation.
because right, we could all just run. I could do it. No, you got to know what you're standing on. Be confident what you're standing on, and be able to recite things off the top of your head without fumbling. Because if you start fumbling, they're gonna know you're not confident in what you're saying, and ultimately knock you off your square. So now when you start hitting them with the laws and their codes they're supposed to follow, and Congress, statutes at large, and all these things, it plays a different role. But you got to be conscious about how you're moving, right? Don't just run out and say, well, I'm going to do this. But there's going to be consequences if you don't know how to handle it,
Right.
right? We're all free. I'm not saying we're not, but you got to free your mind, know how you're free, why you're free, and then ultimately start learning and get the building blocks, the foundations to be able to move forward and handle things in a different manner. And start asking questions and stop conforming to this is just the way it is.
Right.
Right? Ask the right questions. The words person, look it up. Stop just assuming you know what it means. Look it up in the law dictionaries as to what they use it for. Right? Because we got dictionaries for different venues. There's a dictionaries for accounting and banking. There's dictionaries for law, legalese. There's dictionaries for just your English dictionaries, right? Webster's, Merriam, whatever. You know, there's dictionaries definitions for all terms. Congress has their own definitions of terms. When they write out statutes, they have definitions. So to know what the words are that you're speaking maybe might be a start. You know, and you might start questioning, well, I didn't know it meant that. And maybe now you'll start changing your verbiage when you're speaking to others. You know, ultimately, I think to question yourself and then start questioning the things around you.
The biggest thing is terminology and knowing the language because there's a lot of proof about understanding the meanings of our
That word.
language and several understanding, overstanding. I've heard that too. I've heard
Well, in legalese, when you say you'll catch the judge or them multiple times, do you understand? Well, they're not asking you if you comprehend. They're asking you to stand under them because the judge's bench is already higher. They're acting as if the Almighty God over you because it sits this tall and you're down here. So they're asking you to stand under them. No, I don't. I understand you. I comprehend. I overstand.
Okay.
You know, like, so, like, just words in particular. Figure out the true meaning, the root, because the roots go back to like Hebrew and Greek and Latin,
Yeah.
where they stem from. There's just no, we got to know what we're speaking, because then that can go back to the mental portion of it, where things you speak into existence are what your mental is going to believe, ultimately creating your life.
Right.
So if we keep saying wants and needs, it may never come to fruition. I desire is a different way. Instead of saying I got to, I get to. Because you don't got to. You get to do it because you got another day to breathe.
Hmm.
So it's like it goes back to the negative and positive of things. We got to know what we're speaking. That goes back to mental. You got to step outside of it,
Yeah.
right? Because let's just put it in the perspective that everybody you learned from somebody, and then they learned from somebody, and all this opinions or information got passed down to you in some sense to conform your belief to it, right? Because of what you've been taught the whole way growing up.
And it may not be that the information is actually changing. It could be that the perception is changing. Because you can read a statement and
Mm-hmm.
someone tell you how they feel about that statement, and then the next person tells you how they feel about that
And the
statement,
perception.
and they both make sense to you. Now it's up to you to figure out based on the two different perspectives that you heard what makes sense to you.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that's another thing is taking thing at face value versus being able to fully understand and taking all the information that you have to kind of make a better decision. You know what I mean? Because a lot of traditions are face value.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what do you do for Thanksgiving? You know what I mean? What do you do for Christmas? Like those are face value.
I've been to many.
Every year we do this. This is our tradition.
I went from my tradition to a buddy of mine's tradition. This is a wedding.
Right.
White people do some shit that's very traditional and just bland. I went to a buddy of mine's who's Chaldean, and that thing was lit. It was completely. It's not out of. It's different, right? We usually come in, we introduce the parties, and like they walk in, and then we have dinner, and everybody eats. No, the Chaldean side, we all come in, everybody's in there, and then when they did the announcement, it was just dancing from the beginning. It went on for an hour or more, and then we finally ate. It was like the celebration of them only for an hour.
Did you enjoy that?
That was awesome.
Right.
To have that experience and to see the differences between groups, right?
Right.
To see that difference. Divisions.
That's what I see it as. I see
But
all things separate that are. If you could step outside of what you know and step into somebody else's world and you enjoy both of them, it was created as division in my mind.
It was very enjoyable. Yeah. Like I actually liked it more than white people's weddings.
Yeah. But so it's just something that was passed on for so long. That's what you know as what you're saying white people, you know, do.
Yeah, traditions.
What black people may do, or what Chaldeans may do. But yeah, man, that's super important, and it's huge as to the learning process and asking the right questions. So let's go ahead and move on. We're getting pretty deep into this.
I might not have gave everybody like a proper like answer or direction to that last question. You know, I kind of touched in different areas, but there's just so much to touch on.
Well, there's space for comments. So if anyone's got any more questions, we'll be sure to read through them and try to make sure we answer them next time. But
don't settle for an ordinary life. It's easy to be ordinary. Anybody can do that.